set in a world where mystical creatures live side by side with humans. A human cop is forced to work with an orc to find a weapon everyone is prepared to kill for. Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a fantasy action from 2017 titled, Bright. In Los Angeles, a human police officer named Daryl Ward is waiting by his police car while his partner, an orc named 𝒄𝒐𝒎𝒆, offers to buy him a burrito. Suddenly, an armed orc robber emerges from a convenience store and shoots Daryl with a shotgun. The scene cuts to Daryl, who is now doing better after some time recovering. He greets his wife, Sherry, who requests that he kill the fairy who has been getting into their bird feeder. He's a little hesitant, but he goes outside and kills the fairy anyway, while his gangster neighbors watch. Inside, Sherry is watching a podcast where an orc is talking about Nick, who he calls unblooded, or unaccepted by any orc because he is the first ever orc cop. Orcs are typically gangsters or workers in undesirable dirty jobs. Sherry doesn't like that Nick is Daryl's partner, and though he also doesn't like Nick, Daryl says that he needs to follow along in order to secure his pension in 5 years. Daryl is helping his daughter Sophia pack for a sleepover when she tells him that he was shot because Nick is a dumb orc, as her mother had told her. Daryl responds by telling her that all races are equal, they're just different. Suddenly, he hears a car outside his house and finds that Nick had come to pick Daryl up for his first day back at the job. Sophia comes to greet him and says that she's going to her grandma's house, so Nick offers to drive her there with Daryl. While saying goodbye to her father, Sophia reveals that she doesn't want him to be a cop because everyone hates cops and she's afraid that he's going to die. On the way to the police station, Daryl seems to be mad at Nick for letting him get shot while he was getting breakfast. Nick feels bad for disappointing Daryl, but Daryl dismisses it, saying he wants to push the reset button and start fresh. They finally arrive at the police station, and in the changing room, some other officers are bad-mouthing Nick behind his back. One officer named Hicks suggests that Nick had deliberately let Daryl's shooter loose because they're both orcs. However, Daryl thinks that maybe the shooter just got away and that he doesn't have a problem with Nick as long as he does his job properly. Daryl thinks it's weird that humans and elves hate orcs just because they used to be on the Dark Lord side in a war that happened 2,000 years ago. During their morning briefing, Daryl is welcomed back by the whole precinct. He is assigned to patrol the neighborhood together with Nick again. After telling Nick to wait for him in the car, Daryl asks Sergeant Ching to assign him with another cop, but she says that nobody else wants to partner up with Daryl. The first call that they get leads them to witness some cops brutally beating up a couple of orcs. This leads to Daryl questioning whether Nick prioritizes being a cop over being an orc. Nick gets upset and tells Daryl that being a cop is his childhood dream and that his badge is worth more to him than air. The two are then summoned to another scene in which a crazy man named Sorrowling is waving around a sword at a crossroads while babbling nonsense about the army of the 9 races battle against the Dark Lord 2,000 years ago. Eventually, they apprehend Sorrowling and put him in the back seat. On the way to the precinct, Sorrowling starts speaking in the orc language to Nick, claiming that the organization called the Shield of Light has a message for Nick to remember who he is and the orc clan ways. He also says that Nick is the chosen one from the prophecy and that Daryl is blessed. Later, Sorrowling is interrogated by 2 detectives from the Federal Agency Magic Task Force. He reveals that the Inferni, a group of elves who wants to resurrect the Dark Lord, is currently in search of the 3 magic wands to do so. Their leader, an elf named Layla, is what they call a bright, or someone that can hold the magic wand and not die from its power. The detectives want to set a trap for Layla by tracking down her sister, Tikka. Back in the precinct, Daryl is being forced by the other cops to record a confession from Nick about letting Daryl's shooter escape. On their patrol, Daryl tries to persuade Nick to confess what he really did the day he got shot, but Nick tries to twist it against Daryl. Suddenly, they receive a call for unknown trouble at a warehouse in Abrams Street. When they arrive, they are immediately shot at, which overwhelms Nick, who has never been in a real gunfight. They kill the shooter and enter the building, where they find 2 corpses that appear to be glowing. Another corpse is bound to the wall, prompting Daryl to call for backup because he believes a bright is on the scene. They hear a noise and begin to pursue an elf, but when they catch up with her, she blows up a car with her magic wand. Speaking Elvish, the elf, who turns out to be Tikka, asks the cops to protect her and the wand from someone. As backup officers arrive, one of them puts on a glove and attempts to hold the wand. The officers want to keep the wand because it is said to grant wishes, but Daryl stops them and warns them not to steal the wand. They insist on stealing the wand and demand that Daryl kill Nick to help them get away with it, or else they will kill him instead. He calls his wife to tell her to leave the town with Sophie, then comes out to question Nick about what really happened to his shooter. Eventually, Nick tells him what really happened. He thought he was running after the right orc, but when he briefly lost him and later found him again, it turned out that the guy he found was just spray painting and not the shooter, so he assisted him in fleeing because he knew the cops would have killed him. After hearing Nick's story, the other cops show up behind Daryl, and he decides to shoot them instead of Nick. Nick is shocked and wants to arrest Daryl, but Daryl tells him about how they're planning to kill them to take the wand. When a local human gang arrives, Tikka begs the cops to protect her and the wand. Led by a man named Poison, they had heard about the wand being in their turf, and they demand that the cops hand it to them. Daryl assures them that it is only a rumor, but they refuse to believe him. Daryl and Nick rush into the car with Tikka, while the gang pursues them. They manage to lose some of them as Tikka starts screaming to stop the car in Elvish. They don't understand her, and the car collides with an invisible force field. The three find shelter in a building, and Nick explains that the barrier is made from a binding spell that prevents the wand from being too far away from its owner. Layla and her goons had just arrived in the warehouse. The wall-bound elf informs her that Tikka has taken her wand, and Layla then kills her as well as a cop that's still barely alive. They question a nearby family about what happened, and after they tell them what they saw, Layla and her thugs murder the entire family. Meanwhile, Poison's men discover the trio, and one of them explodes after grabbing the magic wand since he isn't a bright. The trio escapes and changes into normal clothes before going into a strip club. Nick and Daryl are preparing to face Poison's men but are surprised to see the whole gang being slaughtered by Layla's goons. While Layla is busy, the trio runs away towards a gas station bathroom where Daryl tends to his wounds while having a heart-to-heart talk with Nick. Outside, another cop named Rodriguez, a friend of Daryl's, has arrived, but instead of assisting, he wants to arrest them. However, after telling him the whole story, Rodriguez decides to call one of the detectives, an elf named Candemir, who agrees to help protect the wand and Tikka. Layla overhears their conversation and comes after them, killing Rodriguez in the process. Though the trio manages to escape from Layla once again, they are captured by a gang of orcs who takes them to their leader, an orc named Dorgu. Rumors of the wand spread fast as Dorgu also wants control of it. Nick and Daryl refuse to give them the location of the wand, which causes Dorgu to order his son to kill Nick. It turns out that Mikey is the young orc that Nick helped escape after Daryl got shot, so he refuses to kill Nick. Dorgu decides to do the job himself and shoots Nick, who falls into the deep hole in the ground. Tikka pulls out the wand and resurrects Nick just as Dorgus is about to kill Daryl. It turns out that Tikka's a bright, and Nick's resurrection turns out to be the prophecy that the orc shaman announces to the others. They bow to Nick and Daryl, letting the two leave with Tikka. Outside, Tikka starts speaking in English as she trusts Daryl now. She explains who Layla and the Inferni are, and their goal to resurrect the Dark Lord. Tikka also used to be an Inferni, but she escaped and was protected by the Shield of Light. Layla had sent an elf to kill Tikka using her wand, but instead, Tikka managed to take the wand and kill the assassin. Using the wand has injured Tikka, she tells the two cops to bring her back to the Shield of Light's warehouse where a magical pool can heal her. Daryl is hesitant to go back there, but Nick manages to persuade him by saying that maybe the prophecy is right. They eventually return to the safe house, but Layla and her guards are already there waiting for them. Fighting erupts until Layla's guards are killed, and when it's just Layla left, Nick successfully shoots her in the chest. The trio quickly goes to the magical pool where Daryl carries Tikka and submerges her in the pool. But it turns out that Layla is still alive and takes her wand back with her telekinesis power. She pulls Tikka from the magical pool and tries to persuade her sister to return to the Inferni. When Tikka refuses, Layla threatens Daryl, believing he did something to change her sister's mind. Nick tries to shoot Layla but misses, running out of bullets. Daryl wants to take the wand with him rather than letting Layla take it back, and she dares him to touch it as she thinks it will kill him. Trusting that they're part of the prophecy, Daryl takes the wand and doesn't die, meaning that he's also a bright to everyone's surprise. Tikka tells him the words of a warring spell, which consumes Layla in a ball of fire along with the building. Daryl drops the wand and looks for Tikka, but she has disappeared. Nick assures him that Tikka is fine and that she had left, but they need to leave soon as the building is going to burn down. Outside, Nick is greeted by Candemir and many other cops, but he realizes that Daryl is still stuck inside. He risks his life to save his partner from the flames, and his act of bravery is applauded by the orcs who are watching as bystanders, at last making Nick a blooded orc that is accepted as part of a clan. The two partners are taken to the hospital while Candemir's team retrieves the wand from inside the building. Sometime later, he and Daryl are recovering in the hospital when Candemir and his partner question them about what happened the other night. While Nick rambles in a panic, Daryl says that they understand if the feds want them to hide the fact that there was no magic involved. The movie ends with a public ceremony where Daryl and Nick are awarded for their bravery and service. The corrupt dead officers are also honored, which Daryl despises because he and Nick are aware of their true nature. However, Nick assures them that they are at least aware of the truth. Daryl notices Tikka among the crowd and the two exchange smiles. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more videos.